I'll follow your lead.
All right. I always feel bad because we do roll call and then people show up after we've gone through their name and so. And you said we have a new person tonight too?
We do have a new member that has joined.
All right.
Supposed to be here tonight, but I don't see them.
All right. Well, how about if we start and we will do the roll call? Welcome, everybody. Glad everyone's here. We'll start with a roll call and people could give a little update on what, if anything, is going on in their community. That would be great. So we'll start with that.
Okay, so Orlando Stokes is the new member. He's from Detroit. He submitted a registration and I spoke with him on the phone and he sounded really excited, but I don't see him.
All right.
Brad.
Yep, I'm here. No new news from my neck of the woods that I'm aware of anyway.
And Cynthia Brown let me know she wasn't going to be able to join. Dan. Daniel Brown?
Yep, Dan is here. We don't have any real updates for our watershed, but we are getting a lot of questions about the Eat Safe Fish guidance that was updated recently. So we've been responding to a few questions per day on that. And we've got river walkers out with HHS up and down the river, and they've been really good this year at getting out and talking to people.
Excellent, thank you. John.
Yep. Yeah, I'm here. Nothing new to report from my neck of the woods.
Mary. Thought I saw her on. Mary Blanchard.
I saw her on too. She's there, just maybe not able to unmute.
Hello, sorry. Yep.
Hey, Mary.
Just wanted to let you know that our politician Mike Mueller and his aide Mike Moon promised us there was going to be a meeting for our residents in May, and have not seen any or heard anything on that. I heard from somebody else today that possibly in July, so hopefully that will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Rick.
Present, and a lot of questions, just like Dan was talking about Eat Safe Fish in Muskegon, especially since some of the lakes in Muskegon have that advisory for the first time. So,
Rick. Tony.
I don't think Tony's going to make it tonight.
Patty's not able to make it tonight. Stacy Taylor. Angela. Bill Barnett.
Bill is here. Glad to see the fish update. Great job there. And thanks to Eagle for all the hours and work, meetings, and everything they've put into our Wexford County matter.
Bill. Amy. See her. Connie.
Yeah, present. The big news here is that in the Detroit news, it was the fish guidelines, and they're asking people to really be sure you watch where you're catching your fish, and that Michigan Department of Health and Human Services realized that PFAS is more toxic than they previously knew. So this is just like everybody else been mentioning it, it's a big thing here in Detroit.
Connie. Lois. Sandy?
Yeah,
here.
I'm here. Oh, I had things on the Eat Safe Fish too. One is I think we have even more here now in Rockford than we had before. I think we talked about that yesterday, Rick. The other thing, I don't know if we have anybody on the COG from the Flint area. Do we have anyone from Flint? Because I had someone contact me yesterday from Flint who was worried about that as well because they were seeing people fish in a river there and wondered about it. So I think we have a lot of opportunity as a CAG to do some outreach and planning for that. So preview of stuff to come for next month, I guess.
Yeah, I know Sandy, in the past, we had people participate, but I don't think they officially joined. And
Okay.
so I know we've reached out to them some in regards to the racer site, Buick City Racer site in Flint, but I don't think any of them actually stayed to become full members.
Okay. Thanks.
Jason?
Yep, here, no updates for my area.
Landon? Elaine?
I'm here, no update.
Teresa Landrum? Danielle Burlingame? Gail Mansowitz? Gail Dugan? Joe?
Present here.
You? Lynn McIntosh? Pam McQueer? Portia Fisher? Rick Burns? Tamara?
I'm here, no updates.
Thank you, Samara.
All right.
Excellent.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, so as we talked about before, I'm very happy that Phil Roos has agreed to come and kind of update us on what's going on and answer some questions that we've had. Hi, Phil. Thank you for taking a June evening to be here with us.
Hi, Cindy. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So people did submit some questions, so I gave those to Phil so we would have some time to answer. But Phil, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you blather away if you'd like.
Okay, I'll blather away. Thanks for having me here, and thanks to all of you for all your dedication to this work and all the input that you've given us and continue to give us, and to try to get to help us continue this battle. I have big thanks to Sandy. We had a chance to get together in Rockford. I went on a tour of some of the Wolverine site work that's going on at the former tannery, and then also at the House Street disposal site. And we have the newly operational, what are the interceptor trenches? I think that's what they're called, to try to capture groundwater, keep it from getting into the river. So that was really good to see. And I had a chance to meet with all of our team who's working on the projects and spend quite a bit of time with Sandy. I got some more deep history on the site and the ups and downs and the progress made, but also the progress that the things that still need work, and just really grateful for that. And we had discussion. We talked a little bit about things like notification. So I'll address that. I don't have a bunch of answers here, but I've been doing some thinking about that, some work. And then just anyway, that was really helpful. And you invited me to come here, and so I'm here. This is the next one. So I thought what I would do is I'm going to give this will be probably 70,000 feet, some of it, but some of it may really touch you all individually and whatever's going on in the sites where you're involved. But I wanted to give a little perspective on the sort of the scope of what's going on in our PFAS efforts And then I've spent a lot of time at the national level with ECOS, Environmental Council of the States, and I gave a talk there several months ago, and I just comparing notes with a lot of states, so trying to keep up on things, share learnings that we may have in areas where we may be leading, pick up on what's going on in other states where we may be behind the 8 ball or where none of us have addressed some of the issues. I want to recap, like a framing for everything we're doing at Eagle right now is, we call it Vision 2027. I think we're going to take the 2027 off of it because this is just sort of the vision for what we want to accomplish. We really want to be an enduring national leader in environmental protection across the bulk of what we do. In the past year, we issued a report with some of the progress that we've made. I won't go through all that, but there's some big things that probably in the water infrastructure investment area, it's not directly on PFAS, but it's obviously connected in enabling wastewater treatment systems, stormwater treatment systems, and drinking water to be equipped to really address the challenges of this contaminant and any new ones that may emerge. There's been a lot of work on site cleanups, underground storage tanks, but also the broader set of, if you know the lingo here, Part 201 sites that the state, there's no responsible party. We've inherited these, or we have tried to go back to responsible parties, and we have had some luck, but maybe not all of it. Just the whole range of cleanups that we're working on. And there've been some pretty big increases in the total number of sites that we address. And some of this is changing our work streams and how we staff to get to those, having more people focus on certain kinds of sites, so have more specialization. There's been some more money, but not as much as we want. And then we've been making pretty big budget asks on that. So I won't go through all the list, but there's a few things that are kind of big accomplishments. I want to just focus though on PFAS and give you an update. I'll call it the life cycle of PFAS. Since I think sort of talked about this, I think last time we met, and these would be sort of the many fronts in which we attack the problem. I'll start with an area where we have done very little, honestly, and most states haven't. There are a couple states that have introduced legislation. Minnesota's passed legislation on dealing with the upstream, and that's ultimately where we have to go. We have to keep this stuff out of our lives. And it's a huge challenge because I don't think we know everywhere that it enters our lives, and it's in everyday products that we use, and most of us aren't aware of it. So we were talking about labeling, we were maybe talking about bans, things of that nature. There were some bills that were introduced in the state, and the Ecology Center played a big role in that, as well as some of the other environmental groups. And with a very tight legislative balance there, and there was some hope even in lame duck on some of those. Nothing happened, and now we have divided legislature. So it's, for the time being, it's a little bit tougher, although there is some bipartisan consensus on certainly on PFAS and trying to address it. But I wouldn't expect any new legislation in certainly this year, this term, but that should resurface here, and we'll be engaged in that when it does. Then I'd say a big area, probably I don't know, 50% of our effort as an agency has been on avoiding contamination, helping prevent future contamination. And that's happening in a bunch of ways. It's also a way to some of this spills over into discovering contamination, but I'll cover that separately. That starts with being able to measure if we've have some standards that we're working against. And we were the first state to, I don't take any credit for this, but to establish MCLs and water quality values. So attacking drinking water as well as our lake streams, groundwater. water of all sorts, and being able to hold, we probably start with drinking water plants and wastewater treatment plants, giving them standards they're working against, but also building it into some of our regulations for a whole range of different things across the agency. We have, I think, the tightest or close to the tightest standards. The federal standards were announced, and they were, let's call them largely comparable, not on every item. And now we know that the federal government is delaying some of those, maybe rolling back some of those. And I know that's one of the questions I'm sure was on your mind. I think that might have been one of the ones that was raised. We have no plans to roll those back. We plan to do what we've been doing, which is continue to try to keep the standards at a level based on the science that we have, and continue to update those as we get new science. And it does seem like the science is going in the direction of more protection needed rather than less. Sandy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just wondering, does that mean you're gonna go to the EPA the EPA levels, the MCLs that were set by the EPA? Are you guys gonna adopt those even though the EPA rolled them back, or are we gonna stay with the standards that we currently have?
Well, I here I'm going to be a little out of my league because I think those technically don't have been changed or are being changed by EPA. We are going to stay with what we have, and there was one of the compounds I think where they proposed, the only one, if I remember right, you probably know this better than me, where EPA was a notch more protective than, and I think we're I don't want, I'm not sure where we are on it, but the general plan was to adopt that one. So in terms of what you want to correct me, Abby?
No, I think you're on the right track. I just would say that, we're going to keep Michigan standards as is for the time being, but we're going to continue to evaluate the applicability and acceptability of implementing those lower standards that EPA had put out last year in the face of this ever-changing landscape. So we are not going to give up our current drinking water standards because it's important to make sure we're continuing to protect public health, but we'll continue to evaluate what the appropriateness and applicability. We've got a number of rule packages going through drinking water right now, and so they're finagling, trying to figure out which ones are going to go first. So I don't want to speak for drinking water in that respect, but there's still a lot of evaluation going on our back end. So I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for the.
Actually, Ian Smith is with us tonight, so if you want it from the guy from drinking water, he's
go ahead, Ian.
Yeah.
Say what the real truth is.
Well, no, Phil, I think you and Abby got it pretty accurately. The key points are that we plan to continue to lean on Michigan's standards and reassess as is appropriate as we see what the EPA rolls out. So you two got it. You don't need me.
Anyway,
thanks.
I know there was a question, which is something I probably would have brought up anyway. We have a new EPA. They're going to be a deeply underfunded EPA, I'm afraid, the way it looks right now. They don't have a fiscal 25 budget, and the year's almost over. And there have been a lot of layoffs, and they're experiencing some obvious cutbacks. And I'll say more on that later. But I have had a lot of contact with Ann Vogel, who's the Region 5 administrator. I've actually met with the administrator in Flint as it related to the lead issue, and they lifted the emergency order in Flint about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. I know her quite well because she was my counterpart in Ohio, and we have invited her to, we're doing some Superfund and other sort of site cleanup visits in the UP next week. And so I'm going to be with her like 2 days, almost nonstop. So we have touched on this just a little bit, but I'm going to have a lot of time with her to find out what's going on and get some insight and push back if there's anything I can push back on. I don't think it's in her control, but I can at least get some intel out of that. Lynn, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is very interesting to me and important as it is to all of us. I don't first of all, I just want to be clear about this, Abigail, that we don't have the lowest standards of other states, and we weren't the first, correct? Aren't there other states that are stricter that look at things in terms of combinations?
Yeah, there's yeah, there's a number of states that have various different combinations of different standards for drinking water. I don't know that we are necessarily the lowest for every single compound. Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so, especially if you see them in combination as a class. So yeah. I remember when I first spoke about the rules back in January 8th, 2000 something, 21, 20 maybe, said I encouraged them. I appreciated them making the rules, and I encouraged them to get back to work tomorrow and start looking at them as combinations, because that seems to be from the few things I've read, and I'm not an expert, but that's the way to go. So I am concerned. Well, we all are, about what's happened in the federal administration and the EPA. Granted, it's very disappointing, but I do see this as a time that Michigan could just move forward and not go back and restudy something or rethink the science. You were ready to embrace the EPA standard. So what is the reason for going back to rethink the science? Why can't we as a state be leader rather than just step back? I don't know if it's because of fear of lawsuits and all that quagmire, but I'm disappointed that we can't at least distinguish ourselves. That's all.
Yeah, no, I think, Lynn, that's a good point. I don't think it's the science that we're going back to reevaluate. I think it's a matter of the timing. There's some administrative stuff that we got to work through with having 3 different rule sets, all needing to get through. And so it's a matter of timing, which one's going to be able to be pushed through first versus the other ones. And we obviously want to kind of see how things are going to shake out at the federal level as well. So it's not a matter of changing science, that's for sure.
Okay, it would be really helpful to see what these are, like which ones are you trying to move through, or why I think it's just not a very specific answer. Like where are we and how much time, that sort of thing. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, and I don't have I don't have the specific answers, because I know Ian's group is in constant communication with the Attorney General's office, and so it's something they're evaluating. And I don't know if Ian, if you want to provide any more details on the specifics.
Yeah, Lynn, I can. So there are a lot of moving pieces, and I don't mean to sound vague, except that is the truth. So we are talking with the Attorney General's office and receiving guidance from them, but we're also in discussion with the US EPA on a regular basis to talk about this. And one of the challenges is our division is responsible for 3 different rule sets coming up here, of which PFAS is one. But there's also a lead and copper update and a consumer confidence reporting update that are also kind of on the docket. And rules timing, if you have time, I can walk you through it sometime if you want to give me a call. But it is
sounds fun.
It's very
arduous.
You can't open multiple rules at the same time unless they are related. There's a lot going on, and I'd be happy if you want to give me a call. I can walk you through that and hopefully answer any specific questions you have, and maybe come back in the future and give the whole group an update if you want.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I don't want to keep on this, but it does help to know that there are 3 different ones other than. Okay.
Yeah.
That helps. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I talked about upstream. we're on avoid and help prevent future contamination. So the standards and keeping them updated, advancing them as much as we can and as much as the science supports. A couple things you guys are well aware of, and we've talked about industrial pretreatment program. That I know we were the first state to do that. I'm happy to say there are 4 or 5 states that are now following that. I can't quantify this, but if I had to just, from what I know, what is the single biggest thing that is removing the most PFAS from danger and getting into our waterways, our drinking water, it's that. And it's been challenging because we now are requiring things of industry that we weren't before. They have to pre-treat. It's built into their permit, their permit with the wastewater treatment plant. And then we regulate the treatment plant, and then we supervise all of that. So there's a lot of complexity to it. But it's just at scale. I mean, it's at virtually all the wastewater treatment plants in the state. It's one of the first things we've had where we are actually physically removing it at that level of scale. The biosolids program would be another example as it relates to land application. And there's standards in that program. And of course, in industrial pretreatment, it's tied to water quality values. But we'll continue to update those as we learn more and can. I don't know if it's going to pass right away or not, but we are very active in working on the statewide septic code and database. That's one of the governor's recommendations in her budget proposal, and we've been evangelizing around that as we recognize maybe but don't fully understand what the threat can be in septics and the impact that can have on groundwater. Longer term, and this will seem more abstract, but we are working on, and we've got funding for this, and this might be the first in the country, a groundwater database that will map the quantity. Ultimately, it'll map and capture and allow us to model the quantity and quality of groundwater in every part of the state, so that we can start to have a big lens on where are we running into contamination, not just from PFAS, but for lots of different sources. So it's integrating data from wells that are sampled, from existing data that is captured when somebody puts in a well, from other sampling that's done, and just a modeling of the geology of areas. That's not an immediate thing. It's going to be a couple years before that starts to get operational, but it could be a game changer in terms of our ability to come to grips with this again at scale. I mentioned the investments in water infrastructure, that equipping our drinking water and wastewater treatment plants to be able to more effectively test and treat efficiently PFAS and other contaminants, really important, and to capture it before it gets into the system. There are a lot of, I can't even mention all of these, but there are a whole bunch of individual regulatory efforts that we're doing on lots of different topics, digesters. Another one is dredging. So as some of you may have heard, there's been a lot in the press about Grand Haven Harbor, and earlier it was Menominee Harbor, because we put together a list of we had all the Army Corps sites that were planned for dredging, and we are requiring some testing and evaluation of the dredge material in sites that are located near a known MPART site, near contaminated site. And that's raised quite a ruckus, but we're working very well with the Army Corps, and we are publishing like this week our guidance on that. And that's also, it's going to affect I forget the number of harbors, maybe 70 or something like that. And there are 14 of them that have PFAS nearby. And of those, there might be 12 of them that we are providing this guidance and requirement before we certify it and before the Army Corps has a permit for this. So you won't see that directly, but what it means is, this stuff can accumulate in the dredge material, and we're trying to catch it before it gets redistributed somewhere else. I don't know if this is going to happen this year, but we are asking for more money for, we're expanding our trying to get approval to expand our hazardous waste fees so that we can expand our hazardous waste compliance and enforcement. So that's if you have a plater or a paper mill, some of the industry where we've had a lot of sites. Yes, there's hold people accountable if they're not complying with regulations, but we're trying to get in there. We don't have the people to get into those sites with enough frequency. It's once every several years. If we can get that down to much more frequently, we can have an impact on best management practices and start to, because I think some of these companies really want to do the right thing, but maybe don't always have the tools. The margins might not be great. There's a lot of challenges they face. We're just trying to interject ourselves earlier in the process before we get to a contaminated site. So those are some of the things on that topic. The one that I know we've spent a lot of time on here, and a big part of MPART's role, identifying and cleaning up contamination, coordinating cleanup where it happens. We all know that we have more identified sites. That may not look good in the press, but I think it's a good thing. It means that we're doing. We unfortunately got involved in this early because of some tragic events, but it means that we have more than any other state in terms of identifying them and trying to attack them, do the sampling, notification, and so forth. And I think our team is mobilized around that, but I think you all are mobilized around that. And I think that, and bringing things to our attention and helping us as we figure out how to do that well. The last area, as I move through the life cycle of PFAS, is destruction. And I think we honestly that's where we got to get. We got to get this out permanently, not move it around from one place to another or to a slightly safer place. And there are lots of pilot tests. I know Abby and team and our RRD team, water resource team, get engaged in a lot of these. We don't really have an R&D capability in a big way here. That has been part of the ORD, essentially EPA's RRD group. And I'm worried about that. I've seen a lot of an update. A few months ago, I got an update on all of the different technologies they were testing, where they are in the queue. And, that's undoubtedly, at least partially at the chopping block, unfortunately. So we're going to have to figure out a solution to that. And I don't have it right now. We may need to lean on universities. We're also getting their federal grants cut. But we gotta keep moving on that so that we're not 10 years from now and we haven't figured this out. We got to get to some that we can actually commercialize in a small number of years. So Bill, go ahead, Sandy.
Real quick, I was going to say, Bill Barnett put a question in the queue that's kind of about that. It says, is Michigan open to innovative ideas to filter or destroy the PFAS that is present in municipal sewer wastewater that is going into rivers? And I think it gets into what you're talking about, like how do we destroy this once it's somewhere?
The answer is yes.
Okay, that was a quick and easy answer. There you go, Bill. If you got a way, send it to Phil.
Let us know. Yeah.
We'd love to have Cadillac be the part of the pilot program that could help the rest of the state, if that's a possibility at all, which would mean some funding and an organization coming in here. There's somebody coming in Friday to talk to a group of us just in the same category. But we hear the director is very innovative, and just thought I would put that out there. And if things could work in a good positive direction, this I think is a possibility. But I'm really glad to hear it being brought up tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, keep us posted on that. I wanted to cover two more things. Funding, first of all. I'm afraid I don't have super encouraging news on this, but the governor presented her budget recommendation in February. It had a pretty significant increase in a variety of areas that would affect PFAS cleanups, water infrastructure, staffing in several departments that are involved in this, with the fees being raised in order to accommodate that. We're understaffed in the drinking water department. We have, in a number of these departments, we have fees that haven't been increased in either since inception or 20 years or more. And so we're trying to rectify that. We're also trying to get cost of living increases. Because what's happening is that the fees are covering less and less of the actual work that is needed. And the work, of course, is expanded. The scope of what the agency does is expanded. We have 550 or whatever the number is of 1,600 people who are touching PFAS in a meaningful way within the department. You add into that DHHS and the other agencies in state government. You throw in local government, you throw in everybody, you throw in all of you guys. It's a massive effort, and we need funding for this, and funding for some of these innovative ideas that could get us on the forefront of some of these areas where we haven't given much attention, like destruction. The Senate finally reported out their version of the budget that was sort of preserved some of the opportunities, had a very modest increase. And then we have not heard from the House. There is, we're statutorily required to approve a budget by the end of June, so that we have time to get things in line and implemented by the end of the fiscal year, which is September. And I don't think anybody thinks we're going to have a budget at the end of this month. I hope there's a turnaround for that. It's above my pay grade right now. We've been out there advocating for all this stuff. And things like septic database, septic code, statewide code, Part 201 legislation. I don't think we're going to get like the perfect package, but we're going to try to get what we can get, if that's possible. And all those are either in our state budget or tangential to it, supporting of those efforts. But that's where it is. So that's going to be negotiated. You've got roads and other things that are part of that mix. And then they're taking a look at things like, are we moving into a recession or not? Or what's the risk of recession? We're not in one now, unless we find out later that we are. And the biggest funding risk is federal funding cuts. So we have our agency and the work we do on this issue, all the PFAS related things, as well as everything else we do. There are a couple of big funding sources. The first one is what we call categorical grants. So when EPA was formed, they delegated 80 or 90% of the regulatory work to the states, and there was base level of funding provided to make that possible. In President Trump's budget recommendation, those were basically zeroed out, with the exception of a couple areas. I don't think that's what's going to pass, but we're anxiously awaiting. And I've been in DC talking to our delegation, our legislative delegation. We've written letters. We have a pretty coordinated statewide effort on this. But that's a real threat to everything that we're doing, including all the work on PFAS. We still have state funding. We still have our state standards. So the work's not not going away in any event, but it just means we won't be able to be as much on offense as we'd like to be, or add a lot of new things. The other piece is water infrastructure. We have the state revolving fund, which is a really important part of that. And the president's proposal was to cut 90% of the federal, what they call the capital contribution to the SRF. We still have a baseline that can fund a lot of the work that we're doing right now, but it just means we'll do less of it going forward if that were to pass. And I think there's a lot of resistance there. And I won't get into climate and energy because that stuff is probably the most threatened right now. So That's just, I wanted you to have that backdrop, and we're being open about it. We're not planning for that. We are moving forward on everything and trying to stay on offense here and advocating our state budget. And we do control our own destiny. We have our own laws and rules. That's not going to change. It's just it's going to make it it could make it trickier to be on offense in some new areas in particular, but we'll still be enforcing all the things that we're enforcing. Lynn? Lynn, did you have something?
Yeah, I can introduce it better now since I have my mute off. I wanted to thank you so much for the wealth of information in this update and your sincerity and your explanations. I wanted, when you talked about the dredging here in Rockford, we had a new Wolverine site because years ago, Wolverine received a permit to dredge the Rogue River and then put it on their own land. And that's the kind of thing where all these things do really make a difference. So I thank you for it's hard times, it's tough what you're doing, and it really encourages me, and it sees. I have only one practical suggestion when it comes to the federal funding. It's just maybe you could have a misspelling and Michigan, spell it Michigan, and then they can't touch it because there was a spelling error on a form. There's just little helpful
suggestions. Anything, Lynn. And of course, we encourage you to call your Congress people and let them know what the impacts of some of this are. And I'm sure some of you've done that. And
again,
yeah, thank you so much. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
Okay,
Connie?
All right, take care.
Connie, did you have something?
Yes, just a quick question on a technical issue. When you do phase 1 environmental site assessment, phase 2 investigations, and you have the soil tested or the creeks that run through the site tested, and you get PFAS hits, there is no cleanup criteria to compare that to in soil. We have no soil cleanup criteria for PFAS. We have no ground surface water interface values. And it's been a long time. We focus so much on drinking water and nothing for the cleanup criteria for PFAS in soil. And so I'm flummoxed when I am doing the investigation for the phase 2. What do I compare the PFAS concentrations in the soil to? And that's relevant because you got to know, do I then prepare a baseline environmental site assessment to protect the buyer of the property from future environmental cleanup liability? So that seems to be a big hole.
Yeah, Abby, I have something to say, but why don't you go ahead? I appreciate you raising that a lot. This is something we were just talking about earlier today.
Yeah, I'll just say, Connie, it is something we're working on, but it is a pretty complex issue when it comes to soil standards and trying to make sure you're actually quantifying mass when it comes to PFAS. So for phase 1, phase 2s, obviously you want to look to see if you had some sort of a release from PFAS or some form or sort of actual source material. And so you and I can probably talk offline at another time and actually go through all the nitty-gritty of what we're looking to do. But at this point, there are no soil standards, so it is always a possibility to create site-specific cleanup standards for any site, or use the EPA's RSLs or RMLs as screening values. That's something that some sites have been doing in lieu of generic cleanup standards across the state. But if you've got a request for site-specific criteria, RRD has been working with responsible parties who need cleanup criteria specifically for their sites.
Yeah, I just add to that this ties into the 201 updates, the legislation that's being proposed. One of the key elements of that is to make it easier for us to, in shorter timeframes, actually update those as there's new science and new learning. So, I mean, it's one of the most important terms of that, what that legislation would do.
And Phil, just one other minor point. A lot of focus is on the wastewater treatment plants and to try to get them to filter out the PFAS, whatever. How about taking a very simple approach and look at the source of the PFAS? And a lot of that source is toilet tissue. So the septic tanks and the wastewater treatment plants have the manufacturers of toilet tissue take out their PFAS. Scott's Toilet Tissue, Kroger, whatever. At least it would be a simple first step.
That's a really great point. I really appreciate you raising that. And that's something. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, you were just saying you're welcome, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Joe? Am I saying that right?
Yes. I appreciate you coming today, and I'd like to talk about money. I'm sure you're struggling with the budget, but here's the good news. That is, as you said, the state of Michigan chose a IPP route to regulate PFAS sources. So other states are trying to copy Michigan, which is a great idea. And then as a consultant, I have been observing some of these IPP communities struggling to do their part of the program. That is, they are basically becoming regulators locally. Yeah. So they have to go starting from identifying the sources of this PFAS, and then they can follow the program to enforce it. But what I see in many communities, large and small, who is in charge for IPP is either lab manager or somebody higher up. Where do they get the support? They got to go to the board or city council, but they're very reluctant to go and double the budget or whatever, because they got to go start sampling, car washes and carpet cleaners and some other sources in the town. But they're very reluctant to go to the council or the board, say, I need double my budget. So they end up doing a lot of things as state is requiring. They're trying to do their best to do it. So what I'm asking is there some funding possibility at the state level to support these local communities? Some, at least enough to go there and do 20, 30, 40 potential sources and find out who are the actual sources. So that's one area. And then the second area I thought they're struggling is for those cities where they take landfill leachates. They're the regulators, but they don't have the legal kind of support as much as these landfill guys do. So I see the city IPP guys being in a disadvantage, so to speak, because the landfill guys got a pretty strong legal resources compared to the medium-sized city or small city situation. So as I observe these kind of issues that these cities are dealing with, I was hoping maybe that there is a way the state could support them. But they're doing a good job, but they're tough, in a tough situation to deal with. So the testing and so forth, they need support. And then how you deal with the major source like landfills. City guys don't have the support they need necessarily. So anyway, so for those reasons, I'm kind of wondering. I know Eddie doesn't have the budget to support those guys. So
no.
since you're here, I'm asking you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we do right now. And I appreciate you raising it because you've just added a lot of depth to my limited understanding of it. I've gotten engaged in this with a couple of big customers where pre-treatment was being required. And then the challenge is, even with a decent sized local authority, for them administering that. And then it also, how much in the middle of that should we be? We play a sort of a support role, but you're just pointing to to make that maximally impactful and making sure we're getting to all the sources, not just the big ones. There sounds like there's definitely a gap there. And I'm interested in learning more about that with our team. Dan, I forgot. You had your hand up a while ago. I apologize. How are you doing?
Good. No worries. I want to make sure other folks got a chance to talk because I can have a tendency to go on. So, so as everybody was talking there and raising good points, I was just jotting down a few notes. So, a couple quick things first. HRWC obviously supports statewide septic code. We found ourselves in this sort of awkward position where other entities around us are advocating for good solutions in most cases that just have a different approach. And I think I don't want to speak for our organization, but I think generally we feel like any of those approaches would be good as long as there's a consistent code that allows older tanks to be inspected with some regularity, and certainly when there's a point of sale after some period of time, or when there's a change where it's passed down from generation to generation, if that's the case. So just wanted to flag that.
Yeah.
Also wanted to flag Ian and his team. Want to give him a shout out with the proposed rules that I think we talked about last September, was it? In the stakeholder meeting, they did a really good job on that. I just wanted to highlight that that material was very thoughtful and well presented. So excited to see that advance. One other quick thing is that we're always happy to advocate for Eagle funding. So we're standing by on that.
We'll take you up on that. I think I've got some time with Rebecca this week, so I'll say that you offered.
Yeah. A couple sort of meteor things that have come up over the last several months in particular. So regarding looking upstream, looking at the sources of PFAS, knowing that the problem is always going to get worse or more costly if the sources continue to emit chemicals that don't break down. Has there been any thought, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, so this is not necessarily a question for now, but has there been any thought or discussion about particularly how to limit PFAS in the food supply, and then particularly how to limit PFAS in the food supply through sort of the consumer goods end? So by regulating the amounts that are in the end products, sort of similar to maybe how the FDA would do it. And I raised that because a few folks that know a lot more about this than me have raised the point that it seems easier to regulate the end product rather than the industry processes along the way that have very powerful and well-connected lobbyists. So if you go after, for example, some sector of the automotive industry that's building the car parts that it's requiring PFAS in the process, is it easier to go after the end product, the fully built car or the fully built bumper piece, or the tire, whatever it is, and looking at just whatever the end PFAS content is in that, or textiles or whatever it is. So that was kind of the first meaty thing I just kind of want to get your thoughts on.
Yeah, no, I don't have many thoughts on it, but it's a really good insight. And this has come up a little bit in our discussions with MDARD on some of these topics. They're further up the food chain, literally. But we're doing a lot of work together on some of these things that are the intersection of where we have regulatory authority, where they do, or at least it's in their domain. But we haven't had deep discussions on it. I think it's a great idea and a big thing to tackle, but something we got to get started and get a fact base on this at least.
One encouraging point on this was that, it was searching for a new rain jacket recently, and the shift just in that particular niche industry amongst, the Patagonias, Columbias, North Faces of the world from 3 years ago, they've all switched to PFAS free is an asset on the label. And whether or not they're actually hitting that is a different story, but they're all trying and they're all saying the right things. So that's good. I think that's one example that people are looking at, with PFAS and textiles and clothing, that it seems to be getting some purchase toward progress on limiting PFAS in the actual goods. So yeah, I just wanted to raise that one. The other sort of meteor point is around the notification of sites. I know you're very aware of this, so I won't belabor the point. There was the memo that the COG circulated, and that's sort of been in play for a few years now. There was legislation that was based on the spirit of that memo that went through several iterations and kind of died in the lame duck session. What I want to make sure that we don't lose in that discussion is sort of the options for the low-hanging fruit. And you mentioned all the budget pressures, which I think really make a lot of this challenging. But one idea that I like, and other folks on this have heard me say this before, but I'll say it again here. The option of like a public voluntary sign up email distribution list, I think is a really simple, elegant solution. So the model that I'm thinking of is something that looks like the MDOT traffic alerts, so that when there's a backup on 23, there's an accident, they send you something just immediately. So for new PFAS sites, not to be retroactive, but for new PFAS sites that are coming out, few new sites a month, if there's a way that when the information is transmitted to the responsible party or to the municipality with jurisdiction, whatever entity has jurisdiction over that site, responsibility over that site, when that happens, would it be possible to just simply basically put out a blast to that voluntary email sign up list? I don't think that would be significantly more work. You're basically just copying text and saying this information went out to these groups, and that's what the information says. It's voluntary who signs up, but I can imagine that members of the press would sign up, a lot of NGOs would sign up, municipal officials would either be notified directly or would sign up. And it's not a perfect solution. You're not getting to the level of where we're canvassing and knocking on doors and directly talking with residents, but I do think it would get to this critical mass of notification where It's going to get in the news, it's going to get online, it's going to get the information out there, and Eagle has done it transparently upfront. So there's no perception that Eagle is keeping some cards back. So I think it's potentially a good trust building option for Eagle, amongst other benefits of just getting the information out there. So I just wanted to, kind of re-raise that as an option, in the broader notification discussion and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, thank you. I might want to just pick your brain on the side sometime in Ann Arbor, because so I met with Sandy, and I said, well, I'm going to do some more thinking about this. I've had a few conversations. I've gone deeply. Abby and I have gone deeply on all the options that were considered, and me getting more deeply educated on what we're actually doing right now and where there may be gaps in that. And I know we've got budget pressures, and I know there's some things. I know there are different philosophies going on here in terms of what do you put the priority on, sampling versus, direct notification versus whatever. And some of that's cost. But I'm going to do some more fact finding. We've gotten pretty deep on some of the stuff, and Abby's thought about this a lot, and been through a bunch of iterations. But I think with an eye toward where are there gaps, where are there things, I like you talking about low-hanging fruit, as where are some things that we might consider that aren't as big of such a big lift budget-wise or otherwise, or don't create unintended consequences that we don't fully understand yet. So spent some time with Rob Kerr on this a couple weeks ago too. I think you've got everybody mobilized, Sandy. So I will keep on that quest.
And if I could say, Phil, you've got a lot of really good resources right here in the COG.
I know.
People who have been right through it. So I think if you ever want to pick people's brains on this or get a group going, you have people just chomping at the bit ready to help problem solve this. I think we're all aware of the budget things, but we also are all aware of the really hurtful things that happen when we're not notified as quickly. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Dan. Thank you.
Kelly, and I bet I'm going to have to hit the road in a few minutes. I have to get to Grand Haven tonight, and I got a bunch of stuff to do to get ready for my meeting tomorrow. So let me just take another question or two, if that's all right. Shelley?
Yes, so as a member of the COG, I'm representing a municipality that has a legacy landfill that has been closed since the 80s, but certainly we have some severe PFAS problems because of that landfill. And quite honestly, this is costing our taxpayers a significant amount of money, and it's taking a lot of money from our budget simply to do the monitoring or the testing that's required by Eagle that Eagle's asking us to do. The lab tests for PFAS are very expensive. And by all means, we're doing what we need to do at this particular point, but we're going to run out of money soon. And so at this point, we're starting to try to do some carbon injection and, looking at some colloidal carbon walls and things like that to try to make sure that we are not contributing to any kind of water contamination, because our landfill sits on an island in the middle of the Saginaw River. And so at this particular point, we're just trying to find funding. We want to do the right thing, but this is like a decision between, can we pay our police or can we do more PFAS testing in the landfill? And it's a really, it's a very difficult decision. And a lot of our commission doesn't really understand the reason why we're having to spend all this money on this landfill that's not open, and we don't have a drinking water issue. It's not contaminating drinking water of any of that sort. But still we're under enforcement with Eagle, and we're under a consent decree because it's a landfill. So are these conversations happening of how we're going to help municipalities? Because it's one thing when it's a business like Honeywell that's got funds, right? Municipalities are not endless buckets of money to be able to fight this PFAS fight, which is extremely expensive, and we need help. And I just don't even know what more to say other than we need help paying for this. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to do it. Either that or we're going to have to lay off staff, not have police, not have firefighters in making those really, really hard decisions that I'm sure nobody wants us making, and our residents can't afford to pay more.
Certainly, is that to understand spread that is, what there are things we can do to help. Abby, do you have anything to add on this, or not putting you on the spot? But
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, I think Shelley's hit one of those points right on the head. I think we know that there's a very big struggle between the obligations of the municipalities and the PFAS, because often the municipalities own the landfill, the wastewater treatment plant, the water treatment plant, and so it's a multiple hits to municipalities to try to struggle through these. At this point, I don't know, other than the SRF grants for drinking water and wastewater, we don't have a separate fund specifically for landfills. But I think it's something, Phil, that probably you and I should take back to Eagle Executive Leadership and have more discussions.
yeah, I appreciate you raising that, and I'm sorry for the dilemma, and it's like even the pretreatment conversation that we had that Joe brought up. I'm sure there are many aspects of this, but that's a big part of the problem. We can regulate all we want, but if municipalities, even sometimes companies, can't afford to comply, doesn't get us anywhere. Mary, and I know you had a question you wrote me about, so I hope you're asking that. But whatever,
I am.
whatever you, okay.
I appreciate you coming. I appreciate the information that you have given, and especially to the COG members who are coming up with all of these wonderful ideas. However, I did share with you that Holly, Michigan has not had a town hall since May 10th of 2021. We have not had a community meeting at all from our agencies or politicians. Our community group has held 4, and there's been $400,000 of state funding that has gone on activity on and around the Falk Road dump. So I am requesting again that the residents of Holly, Michigan be given a town hall meeting to learn about what activity has provided. Thank you.
Is Ken on tonight, Abby?
Actually, I have him sitting right next to me just in case this question came up. So Ken and I are actually both at the same conference. So it's going to look a little weird, but so everybody, this is Ken McRow. He is the project manager for the Falk Road dump. And so Mary, he took over for the previous project manager. And so he's been getting the download, but he's also been out in the field. And so I was going to let him put it in his own words on an actual update for you. And we've been talking about when that town hall could be scheduled and about the best making sure we can get all of the data and a good report summary to you guys. So, Ken, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi,
too.
Mary. I'm Ken McGrow, and as she said, I'm the fairly new PM of the Falk Road site, but I have been out at the site a fair amount, been involved with it for about a year now. And we are creating a groundwater model for the site, a comprehensive groundwater model for the site. And it was our goal to have that by this summer. They have done their round of investigations, additional wells and groundwater monitoring near the lake and things of that nature. And I've seen their initial review of what they were putting together. And our contractor requested additional information, some hydraulic conductivity testing. And also we want to do some topographic survey, because it looks like our findings are indicating that most of it is like surface runoff driven, not groundwater. And so we are going to go back and get some additional information right now. But both of those are fairly quick things that we should be able to get this summer. So I'm starting to report to you that we are not going to have it prepared for a full-blown presentation to the community this summer. As you were saying earlier, you were thinking June or July. That was the goal at one point, but with the need to go back and get additional information, that's not going to happen. But we should be able to get all that data this summer. Then they will need a chance to prepare the report. So I'm expecting to be in a situation where we can present it more around December.
Excellent. Thank you very
And-
much. At least it's encouraging that it's in process. So
Yeah,
thank you
and
very much.
I'm available to you. If you would like to have a conversation, I will reach out to you.
Excellent. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, and
And
actually,
thank you, Phil and Abby. Thank you.
You're
thank
welcome,
you.
Mary. Yeah, and I asked Ken specifically, Mary, to reach out to you and to Stacy and Denise down there just to have a sidebar conversation next time he's out in the field. And then maybe you guys can just meet on site and, have a quick conversation about next steps. So you guys got a good understanding of what's going on. And then we can, we can make sure that when we put the town hall together, that you got the best information with really good visuals and the report's actually done so you can take a look at it.
I would appreciate that. And Ken, if we could do that fairly soon, I'd be able to share that with our community.
Sure. I don't know when you're out in the field, but he'll give you a call. How about that, Mary?
Yeah.
No, that's fine. Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks,
Sure.
Mary, and thanks, Ken. Appreciate you being here and being able to address that.
Sure thing.
All right,
Thanks, Phil.
I think I better take my leave here soon. I hope we covered most of the stuff that
We covered a ton of stuff, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and meeting with us and listening to us. We have a really good, very smart group of people here who are very passionate about this. So anything we can do to support you guys in your work, you know where to find us. And we really appreciate you for taking the time to do this with us. So
Thank you so
safe
much.
trips.
I learned a bunch of stuff here that's important, and it's just good to connect with everybody again as we work through all this together. So thanks
All right.
for all you're doing. Thanks for letting me crash your party here.
All right. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. But the rest of you don't leave. We're not done yet. All right. That was good. With that, can we move on to the next thing, or does anybody have anything else or other questions or other comments?
That was good. Really appreciate Phil. His schedule gives me anxiety every time I hear just like how much she's like bouncing around to all these different things. It's crazy to me.
I don't know how he does it and stays so calm and sober. So that's impressive. The next thing on the agenda that I wanted to talk about was Rick. Rick, are you still here, Radisky?
Yes, yes.
So Rick had brought up the idea of a PFAS awareness week, which I love that idea. So I wondered if we could just spend some time talking about how we would go about doing that, what that looks like, how do we organize that? So I'm going to dump this into your lap, Rick.
Well, I've got a few slides that I could share. If I could, I don't see the take over the meeting, their slide share up there. How do I do that?
Kelly, do you know how we can do that?
Is there not the share button when you go over to the top right-hand corner and it says leave?
Oh yeah, there is
Okay,
a
it
share
says
button right
it's
next
share
to the
with
I
the,
see the share, but
yep. Does it let you do that? And then you just have to pick the screen you want to share.
oh,
There you go.
this might be
Beautiful.
easier than what I thought.
Well, if
There
we
we
can
go.
use it, you can get it. There you go. Perfect.
Okay, so yeah, I turned in a prospectus, and I just wanted to kind of walk through real quick. You know, we have PFAS chemicals. They persist in the environment. They pose a significant impact to public health and our water and natural resources. And I think an annual PFAS Awareness Week would be a good thing to do. We have awareness weeks for boater safety and invasive species, and some of them are just a brief awareness announcements and things like that. Other ones are more impactful, but I was thinking we need to really educate the public about PFAS, and most people have maybe heard about it with water, but now we've got it with fish advisories, and it's in consumer products and foods. So our goal would be to provide a more focused educational, just like invasive species. There's always, some educational things about that, but concentrate on PFAS and try to empower local communities that are impacted by PFAS, promote safer alternatives, and encourage proactive PFAS policy. What I'd like to do is to inform the public, share accessible science-based information. All the information that we present is going to be, well sourced. Provide local officials some tools to help manage PFAS risks in their community, promote action to spur community advocacy and policy engagement, because impacted communities really need to be engaged with the regulatory agencies and the public health departments, and then supporting safer alternatives for products and innovation. So I was thinking about a week-long series of events, and it'd be educational workshops, community engagement, and COG-sponsored events. And these would be sponsored by individuals in the COG that represent communities. Community film screenings and discussions, consumer awareness campaigns, policy action summit. And then for the workshop, I thought we could kick off, have a day, a statewide kickoff event that would be Eagle, MDHHS, and partners. And some potential topics would be blood testing. I'm very familiar with comparing blood testing results with the NHANES studies, but the Quest Labs is a PFAS test, and they make a statement about percent impacted based on 4 or 5 different parameters. And I really can't explain that. I was looking for some guidance on how to explain that testing, but just how the public can interpret results. And when you get results back from one of the companies, is that a real solid assessment? And then the fish consumption advisories and risks. And what I'd like is potentially a combination of these events is a presentation by the health department or the state on the different topics here, but also have communities be part of it. Like, there was a blood testing program up in Cadillac that was sort of community driven. I thought that was interesting. And then our CAG and for the Rockford area help recruit people for the MDHHS studies. So I think there's some community background that could be shared along with the presentation. Same with the fish advisories. The Huron River Watershed Council has had some great success stories to talk about with their River Walker and the some of the additional testing they got funding for with the Ecology Center. So I think having a presentation, but also including some of the positive stories and the success stories of the communities, I think is important. Urban versus rural PFAS issues. We talked about toilet paper a little bit, but there's the issues for an urban community are really different than a rural community, and I think that needs to be fleshed out. Community success stories using Eagle databases, I think would be an interesting seminar. And then how to access water infrastructure grants. People need money, and how can we streamline that process, or how people can go through that. So that would be kind of the statewide event that would occur. And then we could have community engagement events, hold those in town halls, schools, universities, libraries, with local and regional experts, something very specific to the impacted communities that we're dealing with, targeting events of local interest. I think there's a lot of room for, basic aquifer education, getting a geologist and just talking about aquifers and, understanding residential wells, water sampling and treatment, home water filter installation, getting a plumbing company to talk about how you install the filters. There's all these little, connections that you can, use a wrench or push through, and, just talk about how to put those together, and be a good chance to get local people, to meet local people in the area that do this kind of thing. And hopefully we can get sponsors for the events, and PFAS products, of course. Film screenings of dark waters, and then having a Q&A session, so a panel discussion around that. Retail and NGO campaigns about PFAS-free products. It'd be nice if, Meyer or some of the other big companies, would advertise PFAS-free products during that week. Or, some of the outdoor companies talk about, PFAS-free outdoor equipment. But, have that all going on during that week, and then live streaming and recording, so we can have some accessibility. I know live streaming is kind of hard, but making sure that we had recordings of it to put on a web channel for future use. And then we could end with a policy summit, kind of a roundtable format, and to advance PFAS legislation and policy, and get some lawmakers, agency officials, NGOs, scientists, and impacted residents all together to flesh out capabilities and needs, and what kind of policies, actionable agenda for the coming year and the future. So that's basically a policy summit, but then have it involving a variety of people, and then a good actionable discussion. And then to bring this about, we have to have an organizational committee, so we need to have volunteers for that, and we can finalize the activities in the different areas or the different communities, getting some stakeholder input with that. And we want to encourage local sponsors, business and government, NGO partnerships, and then resource sharing. So that's kind of a summary of it. And I think the PFAS action for PFAS Awareness Week is action, education, and change. And we want to elevate public understanding, unite communities, and policymakers have that connections. And we've got that now very good, but we want to really strengthen it, and then drive lasting solutions for a healthier Michigan. And it's something that we can, do one year and then look at it. What are the new priorities next year, and keep bringing the information forward, and raising the level of awareness. So questions? That's a quick run through it. So.
I love this idea. I love it. Let's set a date and do it.
I was thinking,
I
I
love
had to throw in the cat.
Right.
But I was thinking that the third or the fourth week of March would be good. It's because that's after the university spring break, and then it's before the schools spring break. So there's a lot of people that take off then. But I really want to do it sometime where we can utilize university resources. I think they're important players, and they will be becoming more important in the future. And they're part of training the next generation of scientists too. So
yeah, is there how do we go about getting a week? How do we steal a week, Abby? Does anyone know this?
Jocelyn does.
I do. Yeah, Rick, I really appreciate you sending up that prospectus to everybody ahead of this meeting. So DHHS, we actually did take the step to go look to see what it takes to get a week. Nothing too crazy. We just have to do a few things internally, work with the governor's office, do a few things like that. So that is something we're actively pursuing. I'm forgetting what week, but we did do whatever one you recommended in the prospectus. I know it's in March sometime.
Yeah.
But so we've already taken that step, and we're looking to do that. So we're very supportive of that. It's we're putting some things together to prepare for that. So just working on that on our end. Another note though that I would ask for you guys to consider is as part of this week, do you want this in a centralized area, or do you want this statewide? Because I have some folks coming next month for this meeting to just talk about our community engagement structure and efforts and stuff. And we have a regionalized structure, so we have folks in different regions throughout the state. So
kind of just going to want to ask you guys to think about how you want to do that. If you want it in a centralized place like Lansing or something, kind of based on what you were talking about, or if you want to push it to all the folks out here, all folks in this group, excuse me, and make it more centralized, or excuse me, localized to their communities and stuff. So just something to think about.
Yeah. Well, I think, Eagle's got such a good track record holding these virtual summits. They're very well run and they're very productive, and they've got a nice combination of, presenter and then taking questions. And I think that would be really good just for the 1 day kickoff. And then there would be events that COG members could schedule in their own communities. Like we might want to have something about fishing in Kent County, or dredging in Grand Haven, or just depending on what the community is interested in. And I think we can all go back to our community roots and find out. But I could just see some local events. But there's also, if we did recordings of them, that maybe the community in Pellston would be interested in what the people around the Cascade Airport did to help get water extensions out there. So, I mean, if we have a whole list of ideas, we can kind of market those out to other parts of the state or other communities, because everybody's dealing with PFAS, and it's there's rural issues and urban issues, and then there's resource issues like fishing, and then consumer products, and so there's probably a lot of shareable information that we could have. So I would see one big event that would be coordinated by Eagle and MDHHS, very similar to their programs, and then that policy summit maybe like a half day, and that could be virtual or maybe in Lansing or something. But I was just at a big Michigan Tech. I'm with Michigan Tech now, and Michigan Tech was just included in the R1 university sphere, and we had a whole day at Wayne State talking about how universities can be more relevant. Not just do esoteric research, but how we can, work with communities better. And I brought up, this idea, and there was a lot of support for more community engagement and not outreach education. I mean, everybody used outreach education, but we're really trying to engage the community. And how do we do that? So this is a good way to start that process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I'm very encouraged, Joycelyn, that you're working on that. So thank you.
Sandy, jump in.
Just a couple of ideas, because I just got done planning a national conference. One, Cadillac is actually doing a PFAS resource fair the end of this month on Friday the 26th, that they've gotten an amazing number of vendors to come up there to talk about water testing and disposal methods and everything. And that's kind of a cool model to do. I worry that I don't know how we would get Cyclopure or some of these other places to go to all these communities. But I think those are just issues we can sort of figure out as we go. The other thing is, I want to be really sensitive to the fact that Eagle and MDHHS and others are probably looking at very tight budgets, very, very tight budgets. And so I wonder if we couldn't get volunteers, NGOs, and do some fundraising around this to kind of help alleviate what it would take from staff. I don't want to burden, how do I put this? I'd rather have you all out in the field than organizing a conference, if we can do that, if that makes sense. So I think wherever we can step up and do that, or get some of the other NGOs around that could help organize this in their communities, I think that would be good. So I just love this idea. I think it's really, it's really impressive.
Thank you. I think I saw Lynn raise her hand, maybe, or yes, Lynn.
Yes, and I'm unmuted both at the same time. Rick, I just wanted to let you know I also think this is a great idea, and I think it's an idea whose time has come, and it's in so many aspects of it. I'm gonna put in, a plug for St. Patrick's Day, of course, in there, March 17th. But Yeah. And I'm glad that you've got so much time to begin planning it. So let us know how we can help.
Yeah, well, the time flies pretty quickly, but you know, I just would really like to see like a company like Meyer, you know, devote some time during that week, and maybe they could be a sponsor.
Yeah.
Or you know, Dick's Sporting Goods or some Cabela's. But I think there's a lot of opportunity. A lot of the engineering firms, you know, they really support, you know, like the wastewater, Water and Environment Foundation, but maybe, you know, some of the local firms that are very involved with, you know, treatment and remediation would like to sponsor an event. So, you know, I just think it'd be really good to get that focus. And, you know, if we could have a statewide focus like we do for invasive species. I mean, I've been involved with invasive species on and off, but you know, that's something that people are thinking about. But you know, I think PFAS is a bigger issue because it affects our health, and it also affects the environment and our resources, and you know, the water for future generations. So I think there's a real need for something like this. And again, the big thing for, you know, Michigan's a leader in all sorts of things, PFAS, and this would be a real, you know, it's I guess it's better than having the most PFAS sites identified. So, I mean, having an awareness week, I think would be a little bit better.
Point.
So
Yeah.
Hats off to that.
Well, and I really like this idea. I think that, you know, Eagle obviously wants to be a partner, but I think we need to be a partner, not a leader. And so I would really love to see the COG embrace this idea, make it your own. We will do what we can to help support it, because I think there's so many different ways that we could, even if the first year we focus on, okay, you know, let's figure out a way to engage all the universities, have the universities come and share all of the ways that they're working on PFAS for the awareness week, and just do a series of webinars and have all the major universities do an hour every day of that week just to talk about the PFAS work that's going on. We could easily fill a week with all the university work.
Oh yeah.
Or do, you know, community updates, or do, because there's so much good work. And when you look at what Michigan's doing compared to the rest of the country, it's just phenomenal. And so, you know, given what might be happening at the federal level, I want to keep this momentum going for the next 4 years, so that we can continue to be leaders, even in the face of changing landscapes elsewhere. We're still getting tons of other states, tons of other countries coming to us and saying, how does Michigan do it? How do you guys make this all work? You guys are a critical piece of that. And so I think the collaborative nature of a, you know, of this kind of an awareness week could have so many ripple effects and things that we could do in addition to an awareness week. So I'm really supportive of the idea. So I guess I'm not sure who you want to put on your leadership team for this, Rick, but let us know how we can help.
Well, I would be taking nominations, or people volunteer to be on the committee. But you know, as soon as we have a day decided, or if we, you know, if there's any question about not having a, you know, being able to set aside a day, but once we have a day decided, I think we should start, you know, planning it out. So we have, you know, planning for the big event, planning locally then, which is more diffused, but you know, each one of us needs to come up with some local events for our area, and then the policy summit. That's why I'm the least familiar with that kind of an event, but I think it's good to end with that, because that policy summit kind of carries forward for the next year or so. And that could be a half day or a full day. I don't know.
One thing we may want to consider is, because I think we need to have a fundraising group to get some sponsors to this. I think we need people who organize the different speaking kind of things. I think we need people who provide support to the different communities and give ideas. So we may even want to look at, we have subcommittees that are, you know, kind of sputtering along. or maybe not even in place. And maybe we look at using those subcommittees to do this instead of what, just a thought. So I think
Yeah,
what we start
that-
out with is maybe we start with a PFAS Awareness Week planning group to do some strategic planning. And then from there, we can kind of branch out. But everybody, I think, is in agreement that this is a really great, phenomenal idea. Is there any opposition?
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, there a lot of good thoughts. The scope of everything that could be included, I think, feels daunting. You know, there's just so much in so many different places, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, you know, what I really love the PFAS conference. That was one of the best conferences I've been to. I really like the structure of that and everything, but I don't, you know, I'm sitting here thinking about how this would work, knowing that there's all these different communities. How do you have people attending for a week, trying to reach places that you haven't reached before, trying to bring in folks you haven't reached before, trying to get college students that probably can't take time off. You know, and I'm thinking like the climate week model and like you know, climate reality group that you know, that Al Gore does, where you know, they have a live stream of kind of the real meaty issues that's sort of always there, or it's a few hours a day, or, you know, whatever it is, but it's this consistent thread that hits, I think, a lot of what you were describing, Rick. But I really like the idea of kind of like satellite events or in different places. So I can imagine, obviously, like no defense screening somewhere in the state. Let's go to. I can imagine a dark water screening at the Michigan Theater, any one of the Michigan theaters. So, you know, a lot of good ideas. Yeah. So I'm a very poor event planner, but I'm happy to think through ideas and content and things like that.
Well, I was going to say a good place to start would be to have that event planning committee, and we can brainstorm ideas. You know, I was thinking about having dark waters at the Wealthy Street Theater. You know, I think that'd be a very, very cool event. And then you know, have spillover at the Brewery of Vivant, you know, or something. I mean, I think that would be a really nice event. And yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities. So.
All right, so we're going to get this on the agenda, and we're going to make this a part of every CAG meeting then. But look for the email to sign up to do another meeting separate from this, that we can start doing some planning for this. And thank you, Jocelyn, for already working on this. So I'm just going to move us along because it's like 22. Abby's got her hand up, and she needs to give us. Oh, she does. Can you give us quick MPART updates too, Abby?
Oh gosh. No, I don't even know if I have MPART updates.
Okay, that's fine too. That's
because yeah, I mean, I think Phil covered a lot of them. We're doing and let me just put my hand down. We're doing, you know, additional conversations around PFAS and sediments for dredging with U.S. Army Corps, so that's still in the works. We've got gosh, lots of discussions going on with with MDARD and MSU Extension, talking about how to better talk with farmers and have, you know, better information packets in a way that doesn't feel threatening to farmers. So that's in the development stages. And then obviously Eat Safe Fish came out. So that was a big deal this last week. And you will get, I think Marcus is still on the schedule for next month to do that update and walk through that information. So, Kelly, was there anything else on our MPART updates that I'm missing or that you can think of?
Nope, I think you guys covered them.
Yeah, it's been a little crazy with people going on vacations and in and outs with various things. So, but we've been just kind of keeping our head above water. So, Mike, what else am I forgetting?
We have 11 sites that are working their way through the process. So probably next month, we may have 11 new PFAS sites to talk about.
Yeah. The spigot hasn't stopped, so we're still
right.
working away. Still
When we
working
hit,
away.
what are we at, 325, 330?
I think 330 plus 36 areas of interest.
All right, when we hit 400, it's gonna be a
311.
drinking game or something.
311 with 36.
311?
And
Okay.
311
Okay.
with 36 areas of interest with 11 more to come. And that's
right.
just the first set. There'll be another set also.
Yes. Yes. So I think those are the
Okay.
big updates. The only thing I was just going to mention back on the last conversation, I'm going to put Emma I see Emma from Senator Peters' office is on the line today. I was going to put her on the spot and see if she had any other potential ideas for the policy portion of that PFAS Awareness Week. So Emma, I guess we'll probably table that for later, but if you've got any specific thoughts or things that you think that Senator Peters might want to maybe send staff to, or potentially discuss, I don't know, ideas, whatever you think, shoot us an email and just let us know what you think that might be.
Definitely. I'll bring this back to our legislative staffers and our outreach staffers and get something rolling.
Excellent. That would be fantastic.
Thank you. All right, subcommittees. We had a group that was, I think, meeting on public notification. Lynn, were you involved in that? Is Lynn gone? Portia was, but
Abby.
she's not here.
Abby, or I'm sorry, Sandy.
Yes.
As far as I know, that group has not met in a while.
Okay.
But especially with Rick's idea, maybe we could combine that with Rick's idea and move forward.
I think that's a great idea. That may be renamed for now, though I don't want to lose public notification in that issue.
Right.
But I agree. So, okay. Mary, you were doing membership?
I was doing membership, but we did not meet.
Okay. All right. Website development. Did anybody?
We were unable to meet today, so we don't have anything to report either. So.
All right. Thank you. And then the assisting communities education one, I don't think that ever got off the ground either. So this is where I wondered, since some of these subcommittees are struggling, and I do think, you know, when you think of like educating the community, I think a PFAS Awareness Week is like absolutely educating communities. That's kind of what it is. It also will help us get more membership if we get the word out. So I think we may want to look at moving some of those community groups into some of the planning for this PFAS Awareness Week and just see how that goes. But those are just my thoughts. So any last words, anything?
There's one thing that Abby said earlier about Eagle HHS not being the lead for the conference or PFAS Awareness Week, but a supporter. And I think that is a good idea for the reasons that she said, but also just because having it under an umbrella that is, some sort of NGO, other coalition of groups, I think will make it more sustainable over time through changing administrations, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it feels like something that should be, government supported, but not beholden to that. So I just wanted to mention that before it fell out of my head. So
yeah, I think we probably have enough NGOs and groups. I feel pretty confident that GeoPan would be willing to, be one of the primary sponsors of this, and I'm sure we have a number of other NGOs that would jump on board and help us do this with some of the logistics and stuff. So along with government, I think that's a really nice private public partnership. And those are, I think, the wave of the future. So, so next month we're going to, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Sandy. I was just going to say that I think to the self-sustaining piece, I think anything that starts as a grassroots movement is always going to have a longer duration and better engagement than necessarily something that's a top down from, government, some level of government. So I really, am hoping that you guys engage in this in an extent and make it your own, because I think that'll, not only drive a better message, but I think it'll also help, make it long-term and make it something that we can do year after year. So I'll just stop there.
All right, so next month in July, we're going to talk about the Eat Safe Fish guidelines, and I think it'd be really good for us to think about. I think Rick and I had a little conversation offline about the need for signage and the need for how do we notify people, and I think we've all been getting press calls and all sorts of calls, so maybe if we can brainstorm with that too when we talk about that. So that will be for July. And then I think in August, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you had some connections with somebody that was also talking about PFAS destruction, remediation, cleanup. Is Jason still on here?
Yeah, there is an additional vendor, like Regenesis.
Okay.
Basically a competitor to Revive. So there's different technologies out there. It's another vendor that has, their approach, and they're willing to talk with us.
Okay, cool. I think there's a lot of them out there. They're popping up all over. So that's good for us to learn about. Anything else before we end then? Anybody got anything they want to bring up or that we haven't discussed or? Well, all right then. I'm going to give you 10 minutes of your evening back. Go outside and get some fresh air while the smoke's not here, and enjoy it. All right.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone. It was good to
Thanks,
see
Sandy.
you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Rick, for all
Bye-bye.
that.
Yeah, thanks,
Bye.
Rick.